Hi, welcome everybody. Quite a few of you are here now, and a few people are going to start rolling in a little bit later. But we have a really special guest with us tonight, Carol Ann from Australia. But before I introduce her, I'm just going to welcome you to our Women's Space Vancouver and our webinar and tell you a little bit about Women's Space for the few of you, anyway, the few of you that haven't been here before. Women's Space Vancouver is a grassroots feminist group in BC, most residing in Vancouver, some of us on Vancouver Island. We're interested in protecting women's rights, including the right to retain spaces and organizations that were created for women, by women. We stand for the protection of women's human rights. We stand for the protection of women-only spaces, including women's organizations, lesbian spaces, shelters for women fleeing violence, rape crisis centers, institutions where women are incarcerated, free from men. We reject sex role stereotypes. We reserve the right to discuss and describe our bodies, our sexual lives, our sexualities, our health, our reproduction, and use real language for those things. We demand the right to gather and express ourselves without bullying and intimidation. We stand for the protection of children and youth, and we support true democracy. And Women's Space does our work through lobbying politicians and government, media, other organizations. We work on campaigns in solidarity with other groups. We participate in public political actions, and we host educational sessions like this one. So we're working for solutions. And if you enjoy these webinars, we would welcome donations. There is a cost for us, a monthly cost for us to host webinars, and we do pay a small honorarium fee to our speakers, and we can accept donations. So you can contact Women's Space Vancouver through our website, and we'd let you know how to make donations. We're really honored to have a very special guest today. Carol Ann is from Australia. She's a lesbian activist, and she represents Australia's Lesbian Action Group. And many of you that are here are probably here because you've heard about what's been happening with this group. And I'll just summarize a little bit, because Carol Ann's been talking about this a lot since it started and since the ruling that was a couple of weeks ago. The Lesbian Action Group is a long-standing group from Australia, but it became inactive for a period and has recently been revised by Carol and some other women in Australia. And the most recent thing that has happened that you may be aware of is in 2023, August, the Lesbian Action Group put in a booking requisition to the Pride Center to have a lesbian-only event for International Lesbian Day. Makes sense to me. For their own protection and to cover their bases, they put in for an exemption with the Australian Human Rights Commission so that it would be lesbian only, because sex and sexual orientation are protected groups there like they are here. They weren't expecting it to be approved because of previous experience, which Carol will tell you about, and also because the Pride Center is focused on inclusive events, which basically means that all events are open to everyone. Although I understand that there's an exception made for trans-only events, that sometimes there are trans events and they're not open to people who don't identify as trans. But the Lesbian Action Group went through the process anyway of applying for the exemption with the ARC. The preliminary response was that it wouldn't be allowed. Lesbian Action Group responded again. And on the second go round, the HRC refused again, Human Rights Commission. But they moved a little bit, saying that LAG, Lesbian Action Group, if I say LAG, that's who I mean, LAG could exclude heterosexuals, they could exclude bisexuals, but they had to include men who identify as lesbians. So, yeah, they kind of got it backwards. And the HRC language stated that women who are transgender would be excluded. And the language is a bit backwards, isn't it? Because, of course, you'd probably welcome, Carol, women who are lesbians who have transitioned or detransitioned because they're women and they're lesbians. it's actually the men who you would like to exclude from your International Lesbian Day celebration. So I'm going to toss it over to you now that people have a sort of an idea, and you can maybe talk a bit about the work that it took to get this, the impetus for you to organize this, to attempt to organize this, and a bit about the process since that time up until the rulings, the two rulings.
Okay. Yes. It has been a process. There's actually been 3 rulings. I'm just going to another screen because it's disconcerting. Okay. As you said, we went to in 2003, we applied for an exemption to run lesbian-only events because we had some complaints made against us.
In 2003, you're saying?
2003, way back then.
22 years ago.
And at that stage, we won the exemption, but another complaint was put in against us from a transgender activist, and we lost it again. So from that time, we went underground. It was just, we didn't want to lose our lesbian spaces. So we just went underground and just, it was word of mouth, basically, for any of our events. And there were lots of events. We still continue to have events, but it was all underground, and unless you were in the network, you really didn't know about it. Because the minute we publicised it, that's when we got the complaints made against us and threats to cancel us and what have you. So that made it for 20 years. Lesbians in Australia, nationally, were running underground events, and complaining mightily about it amongst ourselves. It really got to be a bit boring, actually. We were just complaining about it, but there wasn't anything that we felt we could do about it. So in 2023, one of the Let Women Speak events happened in Melbourne. That was Kelly J. Keane came over to Australia and ran a Let Women Speak event in each capital. Mm-hmm. And we had one in Melbourne, which you may or may not have heard about, with the Nazis turning up with their Nazi salutes and the trans activists trying to get at us. It was just appalling. It was quite shocking, actually, to be there. And then after that event, even the Prime Minister, the Premier, and all the leaders, politician leaders, and the media all piled onto us too. So a group of us got together after that, really angry. We were traumatized, but really, really angry. And a group of lesbians from that whole turfy mass decided enough of the complaining amongst ourselves. We just had to do something. We had to do some action. So we got together and decided that the action that we would do would be to apply for another exemption to run a lesbian event. And as this was in August, I think we had our meeting in June 23, and International Lesbian Day was coming up in October. So we said, okay, let's go for it. We will put in for another exemption to run this event for International Lesbian Day. And we decided...
Can you explain a little bit about what that means to people who haven't dealt with the Human Rights Commission? What is the exemption for?
Okay. So under our Sex Discrimination Act, they have a possibility of going for an exemption, and you can go for a temporary exemption, which up to 5 years, and they also have a permanent exemption, which applies to private clubs.
Right.
So to apply for this temporary exemption under the Sex Discrimination Act, it is in order to provide some equalisation of groups within the protected categories.
Right. So you can discriminate because you're a protected group. You can discriminate against those outside and say this is for us.
Yeah. In order for us to get equal rights,
yes,
basically.
Right.
So that's what we went for, because we wanted to be able to publicise our events and not be jumped on for doing that.
Right.
And the temporary exemption would allow that. So we applied to the Pride Centre, which, as you said, is all inclusive. So anyone and everyone can go along there. Now, we did this knowing that we weren't going to win, because we'd lost before, and we had also seen the writing on the wall in terms of what was happening with the Australian Human Rights Commission. We've got the case here with Sal Grover of Tickle versus Giggle. Tickle being a man who wanted to get onto a women-only app, and was thrown off because he's a man, and has taken Sal Grover to court over it. So, and there's all the sports things, everything that's going on around the world was the same here in Australia. And so we knew the writing was on the wall, that it was probably 99% sure that we would not get an exemption, and also that we would not be allowed to have our event at the Pride Centre. But we decided to do it so that we could publicise what was going on. And just make a noise, really, stand up and be counted and be active, and also to let other lesbians know that, if they were a bit turfy, then they're not alone. There's others that think the same thing. No one was really being loud about it, so we thought it's about time we would do that. So yes, we went. This was back in 23. Went to the Australian Human Rights Commission. They turned us down a first time with their preliminary review, and then the second time with their final decision. So then we went on last year to appeal that decision at the Administrative Review Tribunal. That was September last year. January this year we got the answer, and it was again no. So now we're appealing to the federal court. Right. So we're going the next stage too.
And I'm going to ask you about the federal court in a minute, but I'm wondering, a couple of questions about you and about the group. Are you the only public face, open that's being a spokeswoman for the group?
Our group is quite tiny. There's only 8 of us, and that's changed over the time. We started off with 13, but some withdrew because they did not want to take the risk. And there are risks these days. But others of us, like me, I've got nothing to lose, so I don't care.
Are you receiving harassment and threats as an individual?
No.
Okay, good.
No, I haven't had any threats or touch wood.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, maybe I'm too old and ugly enough to get it. They wipe us off as dinosaurs, don't they? Old ladies are just going to die out soon, so why bother with them?
Yeah.
So yes, there's 8 of us now, and myself and Nicole are the lesbians at the moment. Nicole's actually taking over from me because I need a bit of a break. I'm still with LAG, but I've just got worn out with 2 years of all this rubbish.
You're supposed to be gardening and relaxing and reading books or something, right? Because that's what you were hoping to have time for.
I don't think I'm going to get that anytime soon, but
I don't think I am either. Yeah.
No, there's still a lot to do, a lot to do.
Yeah.
Because all this really is about rebuilding lesbian community in Australia, especially for the young lesbians. You know, like young lesbians who do not believe that men can be lesbians are just so isolated and so fearful for their social networks, for their jobs, for their academic results and careers, the whole thing. So, you know, the big picture of this is actually rebuilding lesbian community here.
Are younger women reaching out to you? Have you had any contact with younger women?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Slowly and tentatively. We've got a young lesbian group that has a Zoom once a month together and also keeps in touch between that. We had a conference last year, a lesbian conference last year, and our main panel of speakers were young lesbians. So yes, they are slowly.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So we've got over 20 in that group, which is good.
Yeah, that's great. And when you had your conference, what was the location and how did you manage that? Was that just a private event and how many went?
Yeah, it was in Melbourne, Australia, and we had about 60, just over 60 women there, and yes, we kept it low key and you know, in-house basically.
No public advertising then?
No. We have formed the Lesbian Club.
Right.
Coming out of the initial decision to, you know, not give us an exemption, they did give us the information that if we were a private club, we could choose who our members are and we could run events for members only, and that would give us a permanent exemption. So, I mean, it's not the full answer. We don't want it, you know, it's still semi-underground and private and what have you. Right. But we decided that as an interim step, what we would do would set up the Lesbian Club for members and do events for members only. So when we've done that, and we're now up to nearly 250 members.
Oh, great.
And we've been organising events, all sorts of events. So we put them up on our web page. And we're growing. So
your website certain things are seen by members. There's a members section, is that right? And then the regular site describes it.
The public page is a bit of a teaser and just, but it doesn't give any personal information or information about places or times or anything. So when members join us, they get the login to the members area behind the scenes, and that gives all the details.
Oh, great. Well, you know, as you know, some of us are working on, early stages. Working on might be a bit of a exaggeration, but working toward, I guess, a similar thing, because that's why we met previously when you agreed to meet with us when you had formed your group, Lesbian Club. But you promote the Lesbian Club as a place that women can join, right?
Yeah.
does it just sit quietly as a website, and if you happen to come across it,
No,
you
we are promoting it.
okay?
Not not far and wide at the moment, although I have put it on X
Oh, good.
um, and Facebook pages, but
Okay.
not constantly because we wanted it to establish
Yes.
first and to feel safe.
Yeah.
And so we were just testing the waters. But yeah, with the success of it,
Hmm.
this year one of our aims is to really expand the membership, because one of the things that came out in the last decision handed back down by the ART this year was that apparently we are a discrete minority amongst
What
a
does that
minority.
mean? Discreet.
A discrete minority that, and by that I think he means lesbians who believe that men can't be lesbians are a discrete minority, and
Interesting.
we want to show them that no, that there are numbers of us, there are loads of us that
Hmm.
do not believe that men can be lesbians. So if we can grow the lesbian club
Right.
to a sizable number,
You'll be
then we.
less discreet and less of a
That's
minority.
right.
Now, the art is the review tribunal, right, of the Australian Human Rights Commission. Is that right?
Sorry,
That
say that again.
is art. When you said art has called you that, that's the administrative review tribunal from
That's right.
the Human Rights Commission, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And well, that's wonderful about the lesbian club having an exemption. Does that mean that when a man applies, because someday one will, you can say no,
Yes. It's in our constitution
right?
that we can say no, and legally we are allowed to choose our membership criteria.
Okay.
All of this is yet to be tested, of
Yeah.
course, and that's why we haven't been really pushing the profile just
Hmm.
yet. But that's what the Australian Human Rights Commission have said, is that if we're a membership-based club, we
Right.
can choose our members, and
Yeah.
it doesn't stop someone making a complaint against
Sure.
us, which, as you say, they probably will at some stage.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
and
And it would
and
go
then
to
it
the
might
Human
be
Rights
another
Commission,
test case. Yeah, it might be another test case
another
then
test case. Yeah.
of how strong is this permanent exemption thing.
Right. And you're registered, are you, as a society, as a nonprofit society, or as a nonprofit
Yeah,
organization, or
here we do we become an incorporated body, so
incorporated
that's
body?
association. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh,
both LAG and the Lesbian Club are associations,
okay.
incorporated bodies. That's because what that does is give limited liability. So personally, the members of the both those bodies can't be held liable.
Okay.
So we particularly need that with LAG, given that we're going to court with this. And if it comes to the stage that, we have to pay costs,
Hmm.
we haven't got money. So,
Right.
and,
But
and
I think you'll get money, because I've seen some a mention from you that you were going to start raising money, and I saw a lot of people jump on and say, "Just tell me when." So I think
that's true. We have only just this week released the details of, because we had a bit of time to decide whether we really would go to the
yeah.
federal court,
Hmm.
because this is a bit more of a big deal.
Hmm.
Our legal team is really keen
Yeah.
to take it further,
Yeah.
and they want it to be to a full court, which means 3 judges
Okay. Oh, good.
as opposed to 1 judge. So they want to make it a big deal. And so, yes, it is a bigger thing to have decided upon. So it was only, within the last fortnight that we said, yes, we will go ahead with it, and gave the legal team the go ahead.
Yes.
And so then we could, and then file for that appeal.
Right.
Once we had actually filed for the appeal, we could then put out the notice in terms of donations and helping with the costs. And I must say the response has been absolutely wonderful. It's really heartening. It is really heartening to see that we're not doing this alone.
No.
That there's people all over the place.
Yeah.
And from all walks of life who really want to see us succeed in this. So
many countries around the world. And for sure.
And we thank everybody for that. It's fantastic.
Yes. Well, before we go, I do want to talk to you a bit about your legal team and your and what the federal court will entail before we go to questions from all the people attending. I just want to go back a little bit and talk about some of the things that were said. I heard a little bit and read a little bit about the kind of case that you presented when you challenged and went back to court, and you had expert witnesses and many letters of support, etc. And then the other side, I don't know who the other side is. Is it the Human Rights Commission, or is it a bunch of other activists? Or
no, it's the Australian Human Rights Commission.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm curious. I think people might want to hear what some of the things that were said by the other side as to why it was a big problem for lesbians to have an event.
Well, yes. The hearing, and this is to the Administrative Review Tribunal, which is a tribunal set up to review decisions made by government bodies. So yes, we were appealing the decision that the Australian Human Rights Commission had made in denying us the exemption. And the hearing took 2 days. I was on the stand for 3 hours. The women we had lots of supporters come along, and all of us there felt really positive that the arguments and the case that our team had put forward was really strong. It was sensible. It was well argued. It was well researched. The witness statements were strong. Whereas the Australian Human Rights Commission case looked a bit like it had been cobbled together at the last minute, because they thought, well, they underestimated us, I think.
Yeah.
Their barrister was incoherent at times. Their expert witness was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous for a government body to put forward such a person as an expert witness was insulting. I mean, she called us Nazi fascists in her written statement, as well as on screen, because she was on video call on screen, said, and the people there sitting behind you are all Nazi fascists or aligned with them.
Well,
she wasn't censured. That was let through. It really was a bit of a
makes
farce.
you, which side is professional and which side is the community group. You ask yourself, that's an organization with a structure and a budget, and you're the community activists, and
that's right.
The ones being ridiculously unprofessional.
Yeah, and I think they just rely on their, I don't know, their status as a government body, and what they say goes, and that's it. Nobody can question.
Do you think that it was just an exercise and that they had already decided in advance? They knew that they were going to turn you down, or do you think there was some
Well,
turning point?
the member, Stuart Fenwick, is supposed to be impartial. He's
Uh-huh.
supposed to look at both sides.
Mm-hmm.
He is supposed to interpret it in terms of the law.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the law in Australia is not weighed towards us, it's weighed towards
Right.
trans people.
Right.
But we really thought that he was unbiased and was listening to what we were saying,
Mm-hmm.
and that what quite often got irritated by both the other barrister and by their expert witness.
Mm-hmm.
So, quite frankly, we were surprised by the verdict.
Yeah,
The decision.
because you said you felt quite liberated after, I mean, regardless of the outcome, you felt quite liberated being able to get up and speak in your own language, in common sense, reality-based language, not buying into or tiptoeing around
Yeah.
the language that courts often like to force us to use. And that part was liberating, which was, I was happy to hear that in another interview with you, that you felt good about being able to speak your mind and tell the whole story. But I'm curious about how did you find the lawyer that you said you had a lawyer that you really liked, and how did you get him, and how did you get him he obviously offered to do it for free, or how did that happen?
Well, that was a happy miracle, really.
Yeah.
While the initial process was going on, back in 23, we got quite a lot of support, loads of letters of support that went to the Human Rights Commission,
Mm-hmm.
and some offers for this and that. If you need this, let me know if you need that. And I just filed them
Yeah.
in a folder of offers of support.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came to the decision after the final answer the AHRC had given us to decide whether we would appeal that, first off, I thought no. Well, all of us thought no. This has been exhausting enough, and we've made our point.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not do it. And then at the 11th hour, we thought, well, we've come this far. Maybe there is point in going on and just, standing up and saying, no, that's not good enough. Yeah. And so I remembered my little file of Office of Support, and Lee was one of those who had said, if you need a pro bono barrister, I'm there for you. So at the 11th hour, before the appeal was due to be filed, I rang him, and he jumped on board straight away. He has been there with us the whole time.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Does he have any affiliation? Is he a gay man? Does he have any affiliation to gay lesbian rights? He's just a good person.
He's just a good person. He's a married man with 2 and a bit children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, during the appeal tribunal, he was saying, we, so he was identifying with lesbians. We don't like that, or we want to say that me and my lesbians, it's say. So, yeah, no, wonderful. And Megan Blake, who's the researcher, just a wonderful researcher. She's now been admitted to the bar and will be the junior barrister in the next stage.
Does she work for him? Does she work for Lee?
She does now. She wasn't
okay.
before. Yeah. Okay. On this case, anyway.
Okay.
And then there was Anna Kerr from the Feminist Legal Clinic, who did our solicitor work.
Oh, wow.
Just stunning. Like, the amount of work they put in pro bono was just amazing. Can't praise them high enough.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this is an important case, and they recognize that. And they're on the right side of history here, on our side of reality and supporting rights for lesbians and gay men, because gay men will face this as well at some
Mm.
point, and
And women in general. I
women in
mean,
general, and they will also, their career will be better for it too, because they'll have had this experience and have this expertise. So going from there, what is the process like, do you know, when you go to federal court? Do you know much about how that works yet?